the Pacific Source. So we also have the Health Council, which are bringing dollars that can be leveraged. They are also leaning in on housing and the unhoused crisis. So it's meant to be a space where it isn't just executive order funding. It's how are we aligning the efforts, which again was another one of the points that was raised earlier as a priority. And so it's meant to be a space for a conversation around what are we trying to achieve? How do we do that collectively across these, all of our service providers, elected jurisdictions, et cetera? And what funding do we have? What funding do we not have? Where are the gaps? The other space is that if you tie in the Regional Housing Council and the Continuum and the MAC, there also is a discussion around the regional planning that's required and hasn't been done by the Homeless Leadership Coalition for a variety of reasons. There's an RFP that's out on the street right now. And so that plan that Deschutes has through the CHRO marries nicely into the regional plan that is not only a requirement, but is on the horizon to be developed through the Continuum, and led by the Continuum alongside the Regional Housing Council. So there's some synergy of all these pieces and a great opportunity to mold them and meld them into the way that supports the work of the CHRO as well.
So tell me, what's the RFP on the street then?
So that's funding from the Health Council to support the Homeless Leadership Coalition, of which CYC will be supporting as staffing, for the update to a regional plan, which mirrors exactly what Deschutes and the cities went through to create the strategic plan for the Coordinated Houseless Response Office. So looking at a counterpart for what this could look like, Mid-Columbia Valley, which has Wasco, it has Hood River, it has communities like the Dalles and Hood River, they have a broader strategic plan that is unique to the needs within their communities. And that is what is missing for our region outside the Deschutes County area. So that's the RFP right now, is a consultant to help do that work, that planning effort.
Tammy, is the RFP on the COIC website?
Should be. Well, actually, we just recently polled. We had a one response. The Homeless Leadership Coalition has decided that they want to review the language because they did not get the solicitations that they thought that they would get. And so they want to prioritize someone who has Oregon experience and local experience. So they are determining whether they want to go forward with an actual RFP again, or if they maybe want to do an IGA with a group like Oregon Solutions to come in and support, in which Oregon Solutions has supported other regions with developing their plan in the past.
I had this conversation. This is like, I'm having a flashback to last night's council meeting because we were talking about our growth plan and all of the thousands of different plans that go into this growth plan. You know, the housing needs, the housing capacity, just millions and millions of different plans. And I said this last night, and I'm kind of saying this now, and I'd love to hear from my other elected officials. One of the struggles I have is like, there's so many different plans and I just want to make, and so many different bodies. And I just want to make sure we're as like streamlined and efficient as possible. And plans are great, but it's more like, what do we do after the plan? And I'd love to hear if anyone else shares those concerns. Andrea or Patty or Kat.
Well, this is Andrea, and I'm on the, as well as Kat, on the regional housing group, and I'm having trouble picturing how the CHRO, the CHRO, I'm sorry, you guys all call it CHRO, how the CHRO would emerge. Would it be a committee under the regional housing? Would it if we wanted to go regional, then we have elected officials from all the cities and counties in Jefferson and Crook, because I see at the regional housing group that we are very different
Mhm,
in our approaches and our priorities in those counties.
mhm,
And so I see the momentum that is happening with this CHRO. If it were expanded to be regional, being a very different organization than it is now.
mhm,
So I don't see how that works. And if we were under the regional housing organization, would that mean that we would have to take things to that organization for
Mhm.
authorization before we could move forward? I'm just seeing this as a cumbersome
mhm,
way of
mhm.
doing it. So I'm trying to see a way where we can go regionally and yet act locally in some sort of a time sensitive, responsive manner, which
Mhm.
we are just barely getting to that point where that's what we're able to do.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna
Yes,
echo, this
good
is
point.
Kat, I'm gonna echo Andrea. I feel like I like the very big picture of the Regional Housing Council. It's interesting to me because it does give me an idea of where everybody could possibly fit puzzle pieces together. But I think it will dilute the work of the CRO initially, and that's something I would be a little afraid of. I think there will be some of that as we try to create those relationships and build across a region. It's going to take more time and funding to push out versus
Mhm.
in. And I think that's my biggest concern. And then the way that we probably could best work through that is subcommittee it again for those different topics, which might be more locality specific and driven. And then again, how much work and hours is that? I mean, when we're talking about this, I don't need more meetings on meetings. So
Yeah.
I really want this again to be a more streamlined kind of process. But I also don't want it to be, oh, we'll just have another meeting and we'll invite another elected, because you lose your strength and your message when you
Yeah.
dilute it across different people who don't know how it started or where it's going.
Yeah,
So I think that's the other thing that worries me.
yeah. Great points. Great points.
You made excellent points, both of you.
Yeah.
Yes. I know.
Okay, Tammy,
Tammy,
Well,
give us some
actually,
guidance.
yes,
Now
so
you're-
let
now
me
you're in the
ask the
hopper.
question.
how
What-
does this?
Yeah, well, so what is the CRO or the CHRO office making decisions on that? So I'm looking at the RFQ process, and that is really determining how you will invest. I mean, there isn't really a space there for the CRO. It's actually been each of the jurisdictions. So I'm trying to dismantle a little bit of what we see as happening through this body that you would lose. And because I share that goal. I don't want you to dilute or lose that. But what happened at the CHRO that is actually a decision other than the funding that the CHRO has to invest? Every decision actually is made by each jurisdiction because the CHRO doesn't have decision-making space within the city of Bend.
Nor would the Regional Housing Council.
Correct.
So, I mean, they're not,
yeah,
nobody's deciding for the localities or the jurisdictions. I get this. What we
Yeah.
did do is come together as a county and as localities and find ways to support and guide each
Yes.
of us through different things
Yep.
that we normally would not have done.
Yep.
And I
Right.
think that's really a broad-based thing. And in all of this, because some of this land even for Bend is outside of the city limits, we
Right.
need that interaction and that buy-in, and it gives us the platform in which to have those discussions and
Mhm.
create the direction that we then offer up to the localities.
Yeah.
We can make this work this way. So
Yeah.
is it a decision-making process? No. Is it a great idea hopper? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a place where I feel like the public feels free to, this is the spot where they can go and be able to communicate to not just one city councilor or one commissioner, but an entire county's worth of elected officials, and service providers and staff, and say, like, this is happening, this is what's happening in the community, or highlighting great things that they're doing. I think that's been, for me, like, almost the most powerful part about it, is this is a place for the public to go.
Yeah, it
And
took
to-
it out of the silo.
Yes, yes. And I mean, I think to me that is like an essential component of CHRO 2.0, is be able to still have that place where the public can go and be like, wow, I can access all of these people from all of these different jurisdictions and talk about this issue, which, you know, as said many times today, like, is not just a one city issue, particularly when we have, you know, such regional movement among our homeless population. And I think the idea of, and the county has been so generous with like resource sharing. You know, I mean, you know, the city of Bend has offered up staff. The county has offered up, you know, not only staff, obviously, but you know, a lot of financial resources. Redmond's, I mean, everybody has offered, you know, something to this process. I think that's another key component of it too, where we all bought into it, you know, in one way or the other. And I don't want to see that go away either, because, you know, having skin in the game means that, you know, you want to be solving this problem, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I guess, and so going back to, because I'm going to badly stick to our goals, going back to that community roadmap, then is
Yeah.
we want to expand that outward, you know, under any other organization. It does come down to that Substack. It's because
Yeah.
I don't see the Regional Housing Council having the time nor energy to solve the region's housing and homeless problems by itself. It's going to need these sub venues, whether it's the financial arm or the, you know, the people in each locality. But again, if we bifurcate it down to locality, then it becomes competitive. You know,
Mhm.
oh, Bend is getting this and we're left out. We're not having this conversation. We're not in the room. How are we being slighted? Warm Springs would feel the same. I'm seeing all this money and things flown into these big dense areas, but we really have this need. So again, how do we keep that balance? And this room has done that. We're able to see
Mhm.
everybody's pain points and work
Mhm.
through them. And that's
Mhm.
really critical to that regional footprint.
Well, I would say I'm on the COACT transportation group, and it is the 3 counties. And they were able to, and Patty can, you know, speak to this longer than I did.
Salem to fight for
Yeah,
our region.
we were able to most times agree, even when our locale was not getting what you might consider the fair share, because eventually we knew our time would come.
Yeah.
It ended up being, okay, I understand everybody's pain, but you can agree where it is the most painful.
Yeah.
And as long as
Yeah.
everybody is, you know, getting their fair share, feeling like they're getting heard and that their fair share is eventually going to come, they're willing to work together on that. But it does take time. I mean, it's not something that moves very quickly. And so I don't know that it is a direct model for what this group could do.
And Councilor Blum, the Regional Housing Council was based off the area commissions on transportation. And there isn't another one in the state that is a pilot as well. So it's meant to be where a Prineville and the fuel tanks at the airport get focused the same as 97 safety improvements, where it doesn't get lost. So that's just as a side note, that was the genesis of starting a regional housing council, so that we could also inform the state for legislative policy making and funding and et cetera too.
Okay, So how many houses have been built since it was established? No, really, what's it accomplished?
It's new. It hasn't had a
No,
chance.
it's been around for a while, hasn't it?
No,
No?
it hasn't actually since, it was supposed to start earlier, but we held off because we wanted to make sure that the CHRO office got established. And actually similar to COACT, the Regional Housing Council won't actually be doing the thing. They will be making sure that federal funding is equitable, and we are aligning voices to make sure that we are getting what would be considered our region's fair share. We might be supporting neighbor impact in legislation that the Farm Bill for some of our food insecurity, or for some of the other issues that might be happening legislatively for the state. They might be looking at a policy change that could be impacting our ability as a region to provide shelters or housing, or maybe it's even leaning in on the request to the Gales property, being able to leverage more voices than just that jurisdiction. So they won't be doing the thing similar to the CHRO. The CHRO office is not doing anything in someone's community, but the CHRO is the advocacy and the leaning in to say, this is what we need, this is what we're missing, these are the ways that we can impact this. That's the place where that would be sort of showing up for the Regional Housing Council. They won't be doing the thing.
So in this conversation, Tammy, and let me kind of for CHRO 2.0, we are talking about basically housing that under the RHC, or no?
It really is up to this group how you would like that structured. I think what is being identified is that body does have, and although it's light from some of our smaller communities, it is meant to have a seat for Metolius to Madras to Bend to Deschutes. It's meant to be where you are learning, where you have your counterparts from across the region. And so what you choose to have that body do or not do is really up to you. If you wanted to make part of the meetings just identified toward the unhoused crisis, and you lift this work and it's a, beginning of the meeting is X amount to this effort, and then the remainder is broader, because we know that we have a housing crisis. Yes, we have a homelessness issue and crisis, but really we have a housing crisis. So it's a place to talk about and try to affect change, everything from the unhoused to home ownership. And yet it's going to ebb and flow. Right now, the crisis is in the unhoused space. So naturally, there would be a larger focus there. But we also know that on the other side, there's a lot of effort right now on our workforce housing and investments and et cetera. So there will be a discussion there also about what are the needs, so the answer is it's yet to be determined, and it's really part of this conversation. It's a table set that you get to then make into what you need or don't need.
Okay, so since Andre and I are straddling both worlds, I'm going to ask the crazy question. We just had all these meetings for strategic planning and goal setting for the Regional Housing Council, which should be coming out now. And now we're going to layer this in outside of that, because there's a group of people that weren't involved in this particular group that don't know the goals and needs of the CHRO and where we were driving things to. And now we're going to somehow integrate that with a group of people who've never been in this room except for Andre and I.
I might pull up, if you don't mind, the what the regional housing, what you all decided as your priorities through the
I
regional
know what our
housing.
priorities are, and I know it includes the unhoused and the homelessness, but it doesn't include the background and breadth of knowledge of where we've been and what we've done. It's that whole, here we go, starting over again. And that's the part that I have the most problem with,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
there are going to be 20 other people in the room who don't know where we've been.
Yeah.
And,
So
and so
yeah.
we are at peril of reinventing the wheel
Yep.
and taking time that we shouldn't be taking to rediscuss things that have already been done.
Yeah.
So the members in Jefferson and in Crook have been part of the unhoused discussions in the MAC because they've been at the table, like Nick Sneed in the Madras community, and Crook County they've been very clear on how they're going to be addressing the crisis. They also have been supported through the MAC, and there are, so Katie Plum, as you might recall, has started attending the meetings, and she's the Health Services Director for Crook County. And so they have been supported and have been involved in knowing what's going on. So I don't know that the other communities are coming from a perspective of not knowing what's happening, or a perspective of not being involved in the goal of aligning some of the regional efforts. You
It's
also have,
I'm sorry,
the
Tammy.
CHRO.
It's not knowing what is happening. We're all,
It's not knowing the
I think,
CHRO.
abundantly aware.
Abundantly.
I think it's not knowing the
The CHRO.
path that the members of the CHRO have been
Yeah.
down and the different
Okay.
hurdles that
Yeah.
we've jumped. And it just puts us in peril of, just going through that all again. And yes, we'll have a voice and say, oh, we did that and this was the result, or we've been here and found this. But it's that sort of thing in government that I find excessive and wasteful, because we are reinventing the wheel. And so that's what I want to avoid. So if we do that, how do we jump that hoop? How do we go through it and say, okay, here's the body of CHRO and MAC work, and you
Yeah.
said they've been on the MAC that we've done. So we can put this to the side because this RFQ didn't work because of this language. This RFP hit the brick wall because we weren't getting this. But we know that these are the things we need to fund. We need managed camps to get people where they can start services. We need interim supported housing. How do we thread that needle? Those are the conversations I want to see more blueprinted, that if we're going to take it over there, that we know.
I think we would have to do extensive onboarding for anybody, and I think that's the way to kind of get around that. And I think it's similar to other things. We invite other cities and counties to participate. But if they don't want to be involved, they don't want to be involved, and that's fine. But my suggestion would be we open the doors to our COC region, and part of the deal is like, this train is already moving, and so you will be going through an extensive onboarding process to kind of learn about CHRO history and trials and tribulations that we experienced over the last 2 years. And I don't think I think that would be the same whether the CHRO stayed the CHRO or the CHRO moved into, COIC's Regional Housing Council, no matter what, we would have to do that. But it sounds like we don't have much of an option that we do it. And so I think sort of we should maybe go with the assumption that that is going to have to be something that we're doing. I struggle a little bit. I struggle a little bit with, yes, the fact that there are different people in both, would be different people in both groups. And I would still like to see it as maybe a subset or a parallel process alongside, rather than absorbed into that group. But just so that we can make sure that we are sticking with our mission of focusing on homelessness, and there's communication between the two. I don't know, but I'm not in those meetings, so I don't know. I guess I don't know what I don't know about how they work.
Another point about the regional housing group. When we first got together, several people were asking, well, is this gonna focus on the houseless? And everybody said, no, 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 this is not. That's
Yeah.
not what this group is all about. It was mentioned in the strategic plan and stuff, but it wasn't at all the focus. And I think that there were people who were there who were going to say, well, if this is going to focus on the houseless, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I heard that as well.
Yep, that is very true.
So we need to be sensitive to the fact that, as passionate as we might be about this issue, do we want to be a subset of a group that is not as passionate about, or I don't know. It's hard to see how the dynamics of how they work together. And I recognize that if we want continued funding, this is the way it needs to go. So we have to figure out a way to I don't know, embrace this process.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
going to have faith in Tammy's ability to stress the continuum, because that's really where it comes down to. I mean, it's going to be based on that continuum. And I'm not saying I'm not aligned or I'm not in favor of, but I'm saying these are all the battles I see coming to us. And my bandwidth is getting shorter for them, because when I have to revisit something too much, then I
Yeah.
feel like we're really doing nothing but wasting the taxpayer's dollar. And that is not what I want to do. I want to have some more thoughtful, supported outreach and some things that actually can show that track record that Megan was talking about. Here's our accomplishments so far. Yes, there was a lot of pain points in getting to these small accomplishments,
Yeah.
but they are good accomplishments and they are solid.
Yeah.
And I think that's, because they do lead to the path to housing for people that didn't have that option.
Yeah.
And then I can have a whole conversation about workforce housing and dollars on another day, but there's some interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, what if it was the CHRO was still the CHRO or whatever the heck we call it. And it was a parallel group to the Regional Housing Council, and there was a report in at the beginning of every Regional Housing Council meeting, just saying this is what this group is doing, and vice versa. This is what the Regional Housing Council is doing for the CHRO members that are not on the regional. These are just is that so much more work for everybody?
It's
not
again,
possible?
I'm doubling down on meetings, but again, we're talking subcommittee to the Regional Housing Council. I really see that what this would be, because for the Regional Housing Council to effectively work across the regions with as many people are in the room, there's going to be some subset and some subcommittee and some staff work and some other things, or it's just going to be a bunch of people in the room having dinner, because it'll go nowhere. So there's got to be it's just going to be, it has to have some work related elements to it, but they're not there yet. They're in that planning stage. We've got the strat plan. So we're building all this momentum, no different than the CHRO did 2 years ago. But Tammy, you mentioned this is also a pilot project. What is its lifespan?
Right.
Well, so this is being funded through the Central Oregon Health Council. So it's not funding coming from the governor's office. This is a local initiative, something that Housing Works and Neighbor Impact, so Scott Cooper and David Brandt, also recognized as a need, having a space where they can be have all of their elected officials together and an opportunity to talk about some of the issues, whether that's prevention, whether that's the unhoused crisis, whether that's affordable housing, tax credit properties, whatever it might be, funding from the state. So it might be beneficial. So we've talked a few times about what the strategic plan for the Regional Housing Council. We are just really trying to get from the group, why would you want to be part of this? What do you see as value added that we don't currently have in the region for elected officials and for our service partners? And so would it be helpful if I share what that looks like in terms of these priorities? And I think you might see where the alignment of either the running concurrent or how it blends in with building a continuum, which definitely the unhoused the shelter network, the permanent supportive housing, all of those things are part of the continuum that are going to get us people into housing. So would that, Megan, would that be beneficial if I shared what that
Sure.
looks like really quick? Okay. So Nikki, let me see if I can share my.
So I'm just curious, how big of a grant was it from the Health Council for this pilot project?
It's 50,000 to handle the staffing. And so it's not, and this is from, gosh, 2019, 2020. This is from a while ago. And we've been asking for extensions and sitting on the development until we had the CHRO office a little more organized, structured, and set before creating a broader template. And as you all know, at the same time, the executive order funding came online, a governor shift, and we're sort of, now the puzzle pieces have changed just a tad.
Okay.
So I'm going to see if I can share this. Hopefully.
So while Tammy's doing that,
Do you open
Kat
my
and
screen at all?
I can't see anything yet. While you're doing that, Kat and Andrew, can I ask you, so
Okay.
like at these meetings, so it sounds like you don't do a lot of talking about homelessness. Is that correct?
Most of the initial meetings have been planning stage. So we talked
Okay.
about where we wanted to fit in that continuum, and it's in the and Tammy can show that later. It is in the plan, but it wasn't like the top of it. It's
Yeah.
part of, we understand that we're moving people that are unhoused into housing, but the biggest push for the housing council is those housing units,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
housing needs analysis, these sort of structures and things to get those units out of the ground, which covers all levels of housing and price points. So there is that, but
Yeah.
I think that I don't want to lose the impact of what we've been doing, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
because it's not important anymore and it doesn't fit the optics, that now we're
Yep.
over here to meet this for funding.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. You're muted, Tammy.
Surprising. Surprised. Okay. How did that happen?
Yeah, right? It's very funny. Well, this is good. Okay.
No, I can't believe that we can't get it
Wrong
on
one.
that.
Oh, you know why? Because I'm on the guest network.
Oh,
If I was on the other network, then I would have bandwidth.
Okay, wrong one. Let me see if it'll pull up this one. Can you see it now?
I see something that says board member orientation.
Yeah, it's not pulling up the right information. Mickey, can I send this to you and then we can pull it up?
Yes. Yep.
Andrew, do you think, what, 150 of the homeless out in the forest
Okay,
right now,
great.
sisters?
And I do not know how now
Is
to make
it-
this go away.
From 100 to 150, depending on the time of the year.
Right. But we need them all gone, because what if they start the fire and yeah, we need them gone.
It's just safety. It's public
Yeah.
health and safety. It's a place to have.
This might be helpful while I try to figure out how to get, uh-oh.
There are those that.
Just a minute, guys. Just a minute, guys. It's not.
So I don't know that I'm going to be able to get this to share. Okay. Are you seeing the Regional Housing Council pilot?
Nope.
Nope.
This- Okay. Are you still seeing board member orientation?
Regional Housing Council pilot proposal.
There
Oh,
it
good.
is.
Okay. I'm going to just stop sharing and I'm going to send this over to Mickey so that I stop fumbling around. Let's see, your email. This.
Was it?
Okay, we got it.
Tammy, I think is it the one that you sent earlier via email?
That one is sort of, yes, we could look at that really quickly of what the genesis and the goal of the Regional Housing Council is. And the housing needs analysis is also going to be something that, and that was maybe what Councilor Zwicker was talking about too, of that body will be helping to inform the regional house or the regional housing needs analysis, which is required by the state. And so let me pull up really quickly, Nikki, the other PowerPoint. So if folks just have a chance to look really quickly at that document, that'll show a bit more of what it is that our partners had hoped to establish with the Regional Housing Council.
So yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some parallels, like when you're talking about the regional housing needs analysis, similar to the fact that each city is doing a housing needs analysis. I could see how that work sort of parallels what the CHRO does, right? I still think it's more of either a supplement or a or parallel work than it is maybe something that's absorbed into the regular council, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. It's not meant to be entirely for that purpose. So Mickey, I am sending it your way now.
So one of the things that I think that's important to know about the Regional Housing Council, and because of its work with Housing Works and Neighbor Impact, is they will have a quicker map to centralizing those information for service providers and resources. And it's what we've been asking for 2 years, and it's been proprietary information, and we've needed to go down the path we did to pay for the data dashboard and things like that. So I feel like that's a very positive outcome of the Regional Housing Council, is having all these things, as long as that does a deep dive just beyond housing and goes into some of that assisted services as well that we were talking about for the unhoused, because it does need to be collaborative.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and as we know with the CHRO, we've struggled with getting a lot of information and data because of the fact that it has to be, they have to pull specific Deschutes County information from regional information, and that has been a struggle. And so one benefit of being the COC is that we would have easier access to information.
Mickey, I sent it. It should be headed your way.
So Tammy, going back to this conversation about how this would sit in the RHC, how do you see it with the goals we have today? I know there's some similarities, but really focusing on this part about the unhoused. I mean, I'm operating in this year's immediate bubble of heat and fire, and it's just unhealthy and unsafe for everyone, the people living there and the people living adjacent too. It's kind of literally a tinderbox. How do you see us fitting the goals of helping people out of that specific situation into somewhere safe with those of the housing council, in the immediate?
Well, I'd say it's no different than with the CHRO office. There isn't a body that is going to go in and do that for local jurisdictions. The doing is going to be the coordination of efforts that will be, so let's take China Hat and the pilot that's being developed. That isn't the Regional Housing Council or the CHRO, or really that's not, there's no body there that's going to do that. So I think it's understanding what is the expectation of these coordinating efforts, and how do we align resources to make sure that we are taking what we can to invest in those efforts. Because the CHRO, even looking at the 45 acres in Redmond, the CHRO is not going to go in and actually coordinate removal of anything. That's going to be the landowner or the group that's put together to actually affect whatever that decision is. So, which was a decision that this body determined, that this body doesn't go in and tell a jurisdiction what's going to be happening.
Yeah.
It's aligning efforts and resources, data, and the collective goodwill also of electeds to not stand in the way of other jurisdictions needing to affect change that they see as rightful to them.
Here's a question or thought for everyone. I apologize. I cannot remember if in our strategic plan we talk about the who for each one of our strategic plan items. Do we say the who? Like, who is going to do this? Because one of the thoughts I had was, what if we with this evolution, what if we, it happens all the time. People edit or strategic plans or as time passes, and focus it more as we add more partners to the CHRO for the region, focus it more on like some of the things I saw other pilot programs doing is like basically the continuum, right? Of like one of them had like, prevention was an item, and then street outreach and rapid response was another one, and then like housing, and then community engagement and that kind of thing. And then it might be helpful if we then talked about the who, like who's doing that. And I know that in original draft, we did talk about that. I don't know if, I think that was actually with the task force that sort of that came before the CHRO. We talked a lot about that, like who is going to be responsible for that, because I think that's some of the frustration that we're hearing from the public, but also from ourselves and in our community of like, who is doing this? And so I think there might be an opportunity when we do evolve into the next step to maybe take a look at our strategic plan and make it a little bit more the who, and then more like outcomes based, because I continue to struggle, like when we're in CHRO meetings of not having that tie-in like be repeated over and over again, and our recent work has shown that we are tying it in. I mean, the recent investments in data and the recent investments in managed outdoor shelters definitely tie into our strategic plan, but I think we could probably do a better job at communicating our strategies. That's a little bit of an off-topic comment, but I think it can tie in well to this evolution.
So I like that, Megan. It's Kat again. I think, and I'll punt this back to you, Tammy, and what Megan just said, when we're talking about the strategic plan of the CHRO and then how that is going to move over and be there, how does that align? Because we have goals that still have yet to be met that are in process. And so I think that we want to continue down that path. So what is that kind of path look like? Because they're not things that we've literally landed on jurisdictionally yet. They're conversations that are still being had. And I know that's CHRO 2.0 in the next meeting, but that is a concern that we get these things started and then I don't want to drop the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same team supporting the effort. So there wouldn't be any change in the work that's currently underway. I think
Okay.
if there is a shift that you are hoping that there will be a person who is identified as this person now has authority in each jurisdiction to do things, I think that's where you might start getting a little question mark of, I don't know that each jurisdiction is going to want someone to have authority.
No, I just meant like cities.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
not like the city of Redmond, but cities, you know, this is something
Yeah.
that cities do. And we talked
Yep.
a lot about this at CHRO, right? Like this is something
Yep.
cities do, this is something counties do, this is something service providers do. This is, you know, I think that,
Yes.
yeah, I think that more generally speaking.
Yep. I don't see it changing at all.
So. Are we still waiting on a document or are we?
No.
Oh, okay.
It shows that it has sent. So I'm
Oh. Okay, I'll look.
hoping, well, no, it sent to Mickey. So Mickey, I'm hoping
She's
the interwebs are.
Work your magic, Mickey.
And here it is.
Oh, okay. It came by Pack Mule. So not all of those slides in there are going to be beneficial, but I think it would show the alignment, especially as some of the priorities.
There we go.
So we'll want to skip through some of the slides. So this goes back to Councilor Zwicker and Blum when you were talking about so go ahead and roll through, Mickey, till we get to, this is what, again, keep going until we get to getting to know you, agreements, or, okay, we keep going. Okay, right here is where, whoopsie, back one, please. We did a survey of things that the Regional Housing Council members, so those that are around the table, want to start working on and seeing as a priority. So this is where we were basing some of the priorities of what they want to be working on sooner rather than later. So we can go to the next slide, and you can see that similar in wanting bottom-up approach of advocacy, making sure that there's alignment with instead of top-down from federal and state, coalescing regional homelessness and housing discussions to align to create a better system, understanding the current housing needs of each community. What are the barriers? Is there anything there that we can learn from one another? Meet the needs of those experiencing the homelessness at a regional level, not just community by community. Go to the next slide, please. And I'll let you, and I don't think there's anything on here that isn't of importance, but again, what is of most critical importance versus, so what we did was we took the list of things from the first meeting that the group collectively see as things they would like the Regional Housing Council to be addressing. And then we took that and then asked them to prioritize what feels the most critical today. So all of these are priorities, if you will, but which is the most critical priority, I guess, is what we were able to sort of sort through. So again, looking at where this group landed, and then we go to the next slide, Mickey, if you don't mind. And again, not to say that these things are not important, but this is what they see as the comprehensive approach and the reasons why there would be value in a regional housing council. And again, I'll let you read that. And then when we talk about brokering decisions, again, that's not within each jurisdiction. We're not going to come to Prineville and say, here's what it is that the Regional Housing Council is going to do. It's brokering decisions around, okay, there is a legislative initiative on something. Are we willing collectively to lean into it together? Or is it something that maybe just Crook County or just Deschutes supports? Maybe it's something only Bend supports. So sort of how is that, when we're talking about regional approaches, there's also the uniqueness of what each community holds and values and honors. Next slide, please. So securing funding, advocacy, and then I can't remember if there's one more, Mickey, that seems of value. There we go. So these, again, being themes that were shared. I'll let you read that. And we can go on to the next slide, Nikki. Oop. Okay, so that's that. We can close it, Mickey, if you don't mind. And just as a point of reference of where, getting a feeling of where for counselors Zwicker and Blum, that's sort of where the body is as the Regional Housing Council. And there's no reason that that table doesn't include more than one member from each jurisdiction, meaning the members here that are not on the Regional Housing Council. It is meant to be a broad, large table. So I'll stop there.
So again, Tammy, and again, this was the Regional Housing Council, and we were talking about our goals. And it's one of the things that I remember from that meeting is it was really just housing needs analysis and housing kind of affordability structured. So I go back to my original question of bringing the unhoused to the table. It's there, but it's not there. And I just want to make sure that in looking at a larger table and a regional platform that, you know, we have the room to expand that a little bit to include the work that we're doing here, if that is the goal and the process we're taking, because it is not clearly defined. And Councillor Blum was correct. There are people in the room that they wanted to deal only with housing and not with unhoused. And I don't want to be the ebb and tide of policy that we're chasing the dollars on housing because the needs analysis is prominent and we lessen the leverage of the work we're doing for the unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
The nicest
Yeah.
way I think I can put
Yes. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I would draw us back to, though, that first slide, which did have as their highest priority is addressing the unhoused crisis. But the utility of that group isn't just that purpose, because the crisis we have is not just unhoused. We have a housing crisis. So it's talking about it collectively while not losing the importance of the immediate crisis. So I agree. And I think it is in, again, drawing out identified intentional time for these efforts that are specific only to the unhoused crisis. But I wouldn't unhook the wagon from the overall discussion of that is here on the spectrum. Our unhoused crisis is a symptom of a greater root cause, which is we have a housing affordability crisis and production crisis. So the pathway out of the crisis is developing options for individuals and families to get housed. And that isn't just workforce, that isn't just market rate, that is a variety of products. So I see them as together, but I also hear you and share the goal of not minimizing or diluting the work around the unhoused immediacy crisis.
Well, and that the membership is different and maybe that's a good thing, right? I mean, the more people we have working on housing throughout the entire continuum, the better in my mind, right? And not everyone has, you know, the time to focus on housing and then also focus on homelessness, you know, as a side gig to their side gig of being a counselor or whatever. And so I guess my question is, what do you think that the council, if you were to go into the council and say, we would love to have a group running parallel to this council, that is, you know, the CHRO, that would be focusing, you know, keep the focus on homelessness with coordination between, you know, the two with report outs and that kind of thing. Do you think that that would be something that the council would be in favor of?
Yes, I think you would have in some jurisdictions wanting to join in, which seems like success. Now, again, it's not going to dilute the goal of your individual community's needs because your dollars don't go across those boundaries. But does the intent, does the alignment of the effort collectively cross those boundaries? Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to bring up the fact that housing in Bend is not the problem. It's affordability. The fact that we're going to have another 1,500 to 2,000 apartments drop into the system that is already with 11% vacancy. I don't know if you don't listen to the ads on KBND, but I do, and I call them. So I know that we need a liaison that is actually working on this. I was told by Scott Aycock yesterday that it was Neighbor Impact that had the liaison. Is that really, is there one person that's working on reaching out to all apartment owners in our city and making arrangements so that we can actually make a difference in order to get people into some kind of housing?
Well, there is
You know that-
dedicated, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, I also know that HUD, that was one of the conversations we had, right? That HUD said that they have some funding to be able to work on like landlord
Right.
agreements and negotiation, right? Isn't that what Brian told us?
That's what Brian said. He said there was
Yeah.
very flexible funding. And, I'm like going, okay, so who is actually working on that with that funding? Do you know, Megan, it's for the city of Bend, right? And didn't you get like $5 million or something? And the dollars per Brian were very, pretty wide open to do.
Yeah, this is different. That's the money we got is for affordable housing, and it's there's a bunch of different components to it. This is like the landlord recruitment program or something like that, which is separate money.
Correct. So the landlord recruitment program, if I remember correctly, is they are incentivizing landlords to offer alongside their market rate some affordable price that vouchers would then cover the balance of the cost, because you can't pay direct to the voucher holder, but you can incentivize the landlord. So
Okay,
I think that was what we were
who's
trying to
doing
figure
that
out
and
how to do.
Who's doing that and what's the potential then with those funds? I mean,
So
can they help 500
no,
people? Can they
that's
help-
HUD, Patty. We have to figure out how that works. We should work with the HUD representative and
Yeah.
have them reach out to the landlords alongside. So having someone from either the city or this office or RHC working alongside the HUD representative to court those landlords with vacancies would be a good idea.
I would,
He told me to get a hold of Amy, I believe.
yeah. I would suggest that maybe that's something that we focus on at our actual meeting in August.
Well, we
Um,
keep talking about housing and I'd love for somebody to be doing it now before
Yeah.
a month away, honestly.
Yeah.
I want to know that somebody's actually doing this. We have this incredible historical vacancy that's only going to get bigger and got to know that somebody's doing it. And I would think our group has the capacity to actually confirm that somebody's doing it and let the community know.
Yeah. I can't remember how we got on that topic.
We're talking
We
about
were-
housing.
So
Yeah.
I know
our
Brian's
service,
done.
our service providers, Thrive, Reach, they also work, it's part of outreach for many of the programs. J working with landlords, working with individual property owners. So that is something that is being funded as a thread throughout the system. And I know that it is something that Neighbor Impact does as a designated sort of part of what they do. That is a big part of it. So it's not just one person that you call and they're the only one that works with a property owner. It's a number of entries because it's also based a lot on relationships that those organizations have with either property owners or with the network of units that are available.
Mhm.
Okay, well, it's historically really high. So, maybe they need more
Yeah.
than one person working, or maybe they need 5 people working on it. But the fact that
Yeah.
it is so historically high in Redmond, I'm told, is going to have perhaps that same thing hit, but not for a while. This is
Well,
from
and-
business people.
Commissioner, we also are talking about someone taking $1,000 instead of 24 or 2,800.
Yeah.
That is a very big difference in terms of what it is that they are willing to. So as we're talking about luxury units that we would consider to be luxury units, that offset is significant. And, I just caution our 11% being if we got it down to 2% of those we were able to redirect, I think that's going to be a success, but I don't think we're going to have a lot of, unless somebody knows something different.
Yeah.
I've been talking to the ads, calling them, and I was told 1,500 for a 1-bedroom. They were running summer specials. You can drive around and you can see the signs.
Yeah. So we are
So maybe we
working,
can
and
get
we did
somebody from
raise
the
it.
county to help.
Yeah, we did raise it with Congressman Bentz last week, that with HUD, we are working to seek some sort of an exception or a variance to the fair market rate, which is the vouchers. And so I'll just use that as a parking lot, that we are working on that,
Yes.
because we cannot secure those units with the current HUD setup.
Yep. And in conversations with our housing department, they feel that these units will be absorbed by the end of the year, and that we will be back down, and that from what I understand, the ideal vacancy percentage is 8%, and any lower, then you get into some significant problems. But they feel it was just, the fact of the matter is that at a certain point, a whole lot of units came online all at one time, but that it will be absorbed into the market pretty quickly. But I think that's a great topic for our August meeting, because I one of the things in our strategic plan is affordable housing, but also like next steps from homelessness. So the rapid rehousing, the transitional housing, and HUD voucher housing, and how we work with landlords. I think that would be a great conversation to have in August for sure.
So I do have a question about the Old Mill Inn and Suites. September 1st. Okay, who gets to move in there? What is the category for that housing? Because that is what, 70 units, I believe?
It'll be 74 units, and we are using the coordinated system. And so it is prioritized by the most critical. And so there's an assessment that is done, and individuals are put through coordinated entry, and that helps to identify prioritized populations, which are whether that's medically vulnerable, whether that's LGBTQ plus youth, whether that is our BIPOC community members, also a strategy for our veterans. There will also be a discussion about a set aside of a few of the units to potentially be used for China Hat, which would be outside using the coordinated entry system. But coordinated entry is the best practice for getting those that are already within identified, we know what their needs are, and are able to be put into that property.
So my question a couple of weeks ago was, how many of those units are really workable for families?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but I'm happy to get it for you.
You don't
it's
have that yet?
Well, we do have it. I just don't have it locked into my brain.
So I'm going to go back and be the sticky wicket, because we're supposed to be deciding CHRO 2.0. And I know it's easy to go down our love and passion for helping people, but I think that's the next session of our meeting later today, is our RFQ and RFP process, and where people are going to go. So does anybody feel like rehashing where we are at this moment with where we think we're going to land?
Yeah, and then I guess the next question is, I can try and rehash, and you all tell me what we think. So regional COC level, based on what we're hearing from the state, there are benefits and drawbacks, but it's sort of what's going to happen next. Invite the other counties in Warm Springs to participate in the CHRO, and do extensive onboarding for those that do elect to participate. Run the CHRO as a parallel and complementary process to the Regional Housing Council, with information sharing among the two groups. And what am I forgetting? Does that sound like where we're at so far?
I think the question was whether we would be parallel or whether we would be a subset thereof. I honestly see us more of a subset of a directed conversation from the RHC saying, these are the things we need to see with the unhoused moving towards housing, because these are the things that we're working on over here to create those next steps. Because really our biggest gap is when we bring people into a supported system, we don't often have that either temporary supported housing or permanent supported housing next step. So I kind of feel like there's where we're going to really intercede and have that crossover initially and kind of go from there. So correct me if you think I'm wrong.
I don't think that's wrong, but I think if you're hoping to bring dollars into the region, that would be a good conversation to have, because the fact of the matter is most of the executive order funding has been spent in Deschutes and Bend and
Mhm.
Redmond.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
no matter how you shake the tree, the dollars flow to the
Yeah.
largest areas.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I don't have any hesitation that if you broaden the conversation to have more support, that you would end up losing your voice or somehow minimizing the amount of funding that is going to be dedicated to the greatest need.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, and I would say, and I mean, I don't want to speak for the city of Bend, but it only benefits the city of Bend if there are more shelters and more things stood up in other areas, right? It takes a lot of the pressure and is a release valve for our community. Yeah, I think that's would be an okay outcome if we're standing up more things in more areas for people.
So maybe an idea might also be meeting with the Regional Housing Council and having some of this discussion. And again, the members are many of your counterparts. Originally, we did ask the jurisdictions as they were seating folks at the Regional Housing Council table that there was crossover between the CHRO and the RHC. That didn't shake out that way, and that's totally fine. But again, there's a broader table there where it doesn't mean that you couldn't, come and have this conversation about how do we or do we marry this up? And again, what does that look like? I think it's in the details, so that you don't lose your dilute the efforts or lose momentum.
Yeah.
We had public comment at the beginning,
Yes.
and so I don't know, and this is a work session, so I'm not sure. Leave it.
We normally have it at the end, though.
Well, this is a work session and it was at the beginning according to the agenda, right, Eric?
Was it?
Yeah.
What agenda?
Yeah.
What
So
agenda?
I'll leave it. It's okay, Becca. There is another meeting that does start at 11, and that one is around the RFQ process. So, but I'll leave it. I'll leave it to those. I'm fluff. I'll leave it to those running the meeting, how you like it.
This meeting started at 10. This is a meeting from 10 to 12, and then there's another work session meeting from 12 to 1. I'm sorry if this is not a regular CHRO meeting. This is a work session. So I apologize for any confusion. So I guess, and then before we talk about like the Regional Housing Council and that kind of thing, is there any interest in reaching out and working with our the other pilot programs to see what they're thinking? I mean, it seems like there'd be more power in numbers. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? I think with Tammy, did you say that was it Mid-Columbia that had a sort of a similar structure to what we're thinking? Is that okay?
Yes. And if you look at their overall strategic plan for their homelessness crisis. I wouldn't say it's verbatim, but it's darn close to what
Mm.
you all are hoping to achieve as well.
Mhm.
And again, they are a community action agency.
Yep.
And then you'll find that also success is being shown in Lincoln County, who have 7 cities, and they have a similar model. Lane County, it's housed, it's called All In, and that's housed at Lane County. So they have their health services that is taking that on. So I don't know that you're going to find a council of government supporting, or a couple counties. I mean, it's sort of who's supporting the what, and the what looks fairly similar around leveraging a lot of the synergy of building a continuum.
Mhm.
But for the pilots, for Mid-Columbia, it's embedded in a larger in their community action agency that looks sort of similar.
Mhm. Mm. Pat and Andrea and Patty, what do you think about maybe putting together like a Zoom meeting or something to kind of just see where their heads are at and what they're thinking, or what do you think?
You mean with with the people in the Dalles?
With the
that-
people, all the pilot programs to see.
Yeah, well, it's too bad that they haven't done that. We really should maybe ask Ariel to do that and set that up for who's ever left in the state. Clearly that could be probably done, I don't know, maybe next month.
Yeah, Ariel's gone. And I don't
Yeah.
think they've
Completely?
she is doing government relations for
Hillsborough, maybe.
Hillsborough, I think now. Yeah, she just left.
And
Um
they did do that. So there is a PowerPoint, and Mickey and I have that. It was the sort of where are they now in terms of the House Bill 4123 pilots. So we can send that out to show the structure and where they are.
and isn't Mike Severa taking over sort of sort of 4123 in terms of coordination, and isn't that, I feel like we got an email that said that.
Yeah, I think that the change will be that there soon won't be much coordination, because the pilots will no longer be pilots. They are being embedded in other efforts that are aligning. So that gets back to where we started with the conversation. There isn't going to be a separate support of the pilots.
Okay. Um I'm wondering if we just get a I mean, I don't know, maybe send out an email and suggesting that if anyone were interested, we'd like to have a quick um meeting to see how they think their evolution is going to go. I mean, I don't know if that's worth it, but it seems to me like
Well,
it might be.
Well, I think
Uh,
it sounds like we're evolving, because the support of the pilot is going to be no longer be there. So we're evolving. We're, like you've said before, Megan, there's probably very little choice in this evolution. It is how we evolve.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there is, through the workings of the RHC, a strategic plan already in place for the goals of where we're currently planning to evolve to. So I think what we need to focus on there is what that alignment looks like in those steps, and kind of
Sure.
delineate that between now and August, September, I would imagine.
Sure. And also make sure that we are advocating so that we actually do get this funding to continue this work. I think is that's sort of where I was going with this pilots thing. Is just to make sure. I know that that's something that I was on a policy committee for LOC, and that was one of the top priorities. It's one of the things that cities are going to be voting on, is regional funding. But if
you
you all
guys
think we
want an
should go,
update from Lane County, it's going to be at my LGAC meeting, which is on the 26th, and it should be, we really try and keep right to our agenda times at 11:40 on the 26th, and that is a presentation from Lane County's program. So I don't know if you're all interested, but it's not, it's in a week or two. And it will be Lane County's presentation. And that's the pilot that I talked about earlier in this meeting. The success rate when they combine law enforcement with services 4 days a week. And in 90 days, they had people moved on to housing, 88% of a group of up to 30 people. So they've had a couple of those. They've been incredibly successful. They say 60 days is too fast. So yeah, we're getting some great presentations with this LGAP, and that's in another week or so.
What is
And
LGAP?
Local Governmental Advisory Committee. It's with
Thank
the
you.
Health Department and county commissioners. It's a meeting in
Okay.
Salem I go to.
Thank you.
So just as a side note, we work closely with Kate Budd, who is the lead there. And what's unique about your pilot is that your pilot only covered a certain part of your community, whereas the other pilots embedded into the executive order funding, they were the same already, meaning they were a pilot and they got the money from the executive order because of the structure they already had. So for you, it's different because your pilot wasn't in the same geographic continuum area. The others were already covered by their continuum, and they were the pilot geographic area too. So when the funding came in, the funding came to that same entity. So you are a bit of a unicorn when you're talking about how are the others evolving. They didn't need to evolve much because they were already structured in a way that worked with their geographic area.
Got it. Okay. So it's more, we need to do the evolving. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So do we have, before we go and talk to the Regional Housing Council and talk about ways to do this, I mean, do we want to put together a set of not, I don't want to say like non-negotiables, but things that we really want to make sure that we indicate are essential for keeping the crow the crow? Is that something we want to put together over the next, I don't know when the next meeting is?
Yeah, so the next meeting, and interestingly enough, the Regional Housing Council is going to be talking a lot about the legislative activity, and part of that's going to be shelter network and some of the investments that are needed, which will directly impact this work too. So their next meeting is in August, and I believe it follows the CHRO meeting the following Monday. I would just need to look at my calendar, but I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Do we want to come up with some of those now, or do we need time to kind of think and absorb? And let me just make sure. So you're talking about, it would be
I'm
the
looking right now.
Monday,
So,
the 19th?
correct. So your next meeting is the 15th, and
Okay.
the next Regional Housing Council meeting is, yes, the 19th.
Okay. What do you all think about, is that something you want to do now, or wait? What do you think?
If we are in agreement on anything.
So I had Counselor Blum muted. So she said, we've got 15 minutes. So let's kind of see what we agree on.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, what's a non-negotiable, for lack of a better term, for you, Counselor Bloom?
Well, somehow I see us as informing the Regional Housing Council as opposed to requesting authorization.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see, I do not want to get into a loop where we end up, before we can take a step forward, we have to wait until the next Regional Housing Council meeting, get their
Yeah.
authorization, and then come back. So it's more of a, we are a part of you. We will keep you informed on what we're doing. We will take your information back to our group. but I don't want it to become authorizing.
Yeah.
Do we have an example of what that might look like?
Okay,
So with the RFQ, let's say that this energy, we were already, the pilot was regional. It would have been a broader map of public owned land. It would have included Madras, Prineville, and then those jurisdictions would have, and Crook and Jefferson, those jurisdictions may or may not opt out, similar to some of our own communities within Deschutes in the cities, that they are not prepared to have that discussion yet for the RFQ. You would have sort of narrowed the focus of who then and what properties, what space, and I'm it's not rhetorical. I'm just wondering what would they actually stand in the way of you doing in your jurisdiction? So that we're mindful of where the landmine might be.
I think it's more of and I apologize for speaking for you, Andrea, but like, it seems more like not wanting to have delays in moving forward. I think that was what I got out of that.
Okay. Right, I
but
don't
correct me
want
if I'm
to,
wrong.
I want to be able to inform what we're looking at doing and what we've already done, but not have to guarantee that we would inform them before we moved ahead.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And
So
go
I
through
think as
another
long as-
process. Yeah.
Right, if we're meeting the strategic plans and goals of moving unhoused towards housed, we can inform them that these are the things we're doing. Not, can we do this to continue the process?
Mhm.
Yeah. That makes great sense. Thank you.
What else?
What else? What else we have there's, I mean, I think I would see the membership as not necessarily having to be the same as the Regional Housing Council for CHRO 2.0. How do
So
we feel about that?
we invite the other jurisdictions, but they may or may not participate.
Well,
If they
yeah,
do,
but also, I mean, when I say the membership, I mean, I'm talking about us actually. That there are, because I know that we have different members that are on the Regional Housing Council right now than are on the CHRO. It's about 50-50, it seems like. I I don't think it's essential to have those be the same. They can be, but I don't think that I think it's a matter of capacity and of interest. If that makes sense.
yeah, no,
Okay.
no problem there. I don't see.
What else?
So we would have to rework our bylaws and all of our things to include
Yeah.
a regional.
Yep.
Let me go back to
So-
the ideology of a substack or a subset of the Regional Housing Council. Could it not be we operate as Deschutes County like we're doing, and there could be another group operating in kind for Jefferson, Crook, because again, they're going to have different goals. We're all reporting back. We're all going to be talking about what it is we're either doing or in process of at some point at the RHC. So that would allow them to do their things. And then again, it's going to come down to who is best suited at any point with service providers, assets, locations to move forward with those other pieces, be it new shelters for the unhoused or housing that's for workforce or supported housing, any of that. So I think I keep focusing back that we're going to become some sort of subset of that group, reporting back our actions, and that could actually happen with Warm Springs, Jefferson, and Crook. Do they need to be at the table? Would they be invited? Do we have to change the bylaws? I'm not so sure on that point yet, because I feel like it's going to be a different, I don't want to get lost in a different direction either. The needs of Bend, Redmond, Sisters, Lapine are going to
Yeah.
be a little bit more intrinsic than perhaps Madras and the outlying Jefferson County, Metolius, Culver area. So we want to focus really more on what they're doing for them that works with, you know, their zoning and their code and the things that they have. So I don't know if that would slow us down or if it would be a better idea to have them working in their own group and then bringing that back to the table as well. It does create that level of competition for funds, but it always comes down to who has the elements in place. We've seen that now with
Yeah.
what we can get done here.
Yep.
Okay, I just raised my hand. According to the original legislation, I've just talked to county legal and they're going to check on it for me. But what it says, it sets out, and one of our responsibilities for House Bill 4123 was to develop a 5-year strategic plan to identify gaps in our communities of homeless services, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so it said 5 years. I remember they gave us the $1 million. It didn't say we had to spend the $1 million like immediately, which of course we haven't, but it did say a 5-year plan. Now I know some of them have fallen apart, but that's what legal's checking on it for me.
So again, there's been changes. You do have a 5-year plan and you do have some funding left. The state is not going to be directing funding to the CHRO without it going through the regional continuum in the future.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we talk competition,
I'm not talking about getting funding from somebody else. We only had that $1 million. That's all they told us they'd give us. So,
yeah,
right.
Yep,
That's
you
what
are
I'm
correct.
saying, but it was 5 years according to the law.
But if and I guess are you saying if we don't need to get more money to continue doing what we're doing, and so we wouldn't have to join in? But I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like we should align with what the other pilots are doing and what the state wants us to do, so that we can have access to more funds to be able to deploy more resources out there, like we've started to do. But that's just me.
I'm going to agree that we need to position ourselves in the best light possible to access both state and federal funds. So, and I think that Tammy's been trying to focus us on what that looks like a little bit, but
Mhm.
not having a platform to see, like, if you do this, you get that. It's always harder, but I think that is exactly
Yeah.
what this conversation is coming down to. I just want to know, you know, I don't want our work to be diluted. I don't want to lose momentum. There are funds left in this office. I don't want them dispersed outside of the county because that's not the intent. So there should be some of those things in place to protect the work that we were assigned to do
Yeah.
for the county and the cities
Yep.
herein.
Yeah.
That's why I think maybe that subset, at least initially, and maybe we evolve to a regional subset, but at least initially, I would rather not change bylaws, not rework the strategic plan, not lose that momentum while we're, you know, aligning with these regional goals. And then we can make that decision later. So if we were like a subset, you know, that informed, as Councilor Blum said, informed them what we were doing and worked our way into that process, I think that's a healthy blend.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I love this. This is what is from the front page of our CHRO. It says public coordinating with public lands management agencies to assess current encampments and provide technical assistance for reducing harm and identifying effective solutions. That is from the front page. So interesting. I mean, Deschutes County seems to have the numbers. We have the campers on public lands and county lands. You know, I don't think Jefferson nor Crook can compete with the number of people that we have here. So I do believe, you know, CHRO has definitely, we've got some more things that we really need to do.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily, I totally agree with you. I just don't think that's necessarily exclusive of those two other counties participating in this process. And I think that the more buy-in and that we have, the better for all of us. And I think it makes our work easier to be aligned with the COC. But it sounds like we're still kind of like on that. What do you all? Do we want to go forward with the things that we know? But I would feel uncomfortable going in front of the Regional Housing Council if we didn't have a sort of a decision, or not. We know we're not deciding anything today, or if we didn't kind of have the membership piece locked in a little bit more.
I think it could be the first thing on our agenda in August.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have, based on these discussions, maybe have an outline of what it would look like from the Regional Housing Council's perspective
Mhm.
to work with this board, because yeah, we're assuming they want us to act how we want to act, and it's a great assumption because we're marvelous, but they may not want that. So I think that having some of that kind of feedback a little bit is what their thoughts are about how we're going to add to that goal, or whether, I mean, because we're assuming there is a place for us at the table. And I think our place is, again, in that subcommittee, bringing information forward, at least initially. So it offsets those members of the RHC that don't want to deal with the unhoused. We're doing that work here in the county. It opens up the conversation for other members at the table to engage and ask us how we're doing that work, and maybe create their own subcommittees to answer to those questions. I think that's, you know, we can only be responsible for so much. And then, you know, it would be great. And Tammy, I hate to add more work to your plate, but if we had that sort of kind of visual document by our next meeting of this is how we're thinking it would work with the conversations that we're had in this room. So, you know, how does it work for us to be, you know, kind of independent and still doing our thing? What does that look like? Yeah, I don't think it'll be prolonged. I really feel like at some point we'll be absorbed into the Regional Housing Council. But the learning process can take place through the information we bring forward over the next couple of years. If we've got a 5-year plan, maybe it's the last 3 years, we're there informing and developing that relationship and that footprint for what it looks like in the continuum of care for the unhoused to housing.
I agree with that. And I think that our initial proposal can just say, we're attempting to merge as we are, and that we are open to seeing what the Regional Housing Council folks see as whether or not we should expand, and whether there is interest on the council to expand. And then we can look at how we go about doing that, and seeing if we need to rewrite bylaws and all that kind of stuff when we see whether there actually is any interest.
Yep. Okay. I think that's a good strategy. So it sounds like next meeting we get a little bit more information, talk about it actually, if we need to actually vote on anything or just deliberate, and then we have some representatives go to the Regional Housing Council meeting. Okay.
And Mickey and
So-
Jen and I can get together and distill all down everything that you all have said, create some sort of a structure, if you will, and some ideas that we can go over. The good thing is your next CHRO meeting is before the Regional Housing Council meeting, so we'll be teed up for both. And so out of that direction that you'll be making recommendations, you can provide some clarity of what you want to present at the upcoming Monday meeting, which will follow your next meeting. So we'll be prepared with some scenarios, and then you sort of pick one, love this one, we want a hybrid of these two, and then that's what we can prepare for the following meeting.
Okay, great. So for anyone who is interested, I know that we have our next meeting on I think a different Teams link. If
Yep.
I'm not,
Okay.
and that starts in
Good luck
1
for me.
minute.
Okay, are we gonna let people have public comments then at the first of that one? We did just have a fire in La Pine, Darlene number 3, and I know we've got some people on that would really like to say something to us. And I do believe that we should allow them. So we have to flip to a different link now.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Does everyone have that link? I hope. Fallon?
It should be the same link.
Let me check before people get off.
Okay. And to Patty and Megan, I will be right back. So I'm going to drop off for a bit.
I have a question as far as public comments. I'm noticing in the sidebar here that public comments are for topics related to RFP funding only. Patty, would this be a place for me to make my testimony, do you think?
You know what? There was a fire. Yeah, you almost lost your house for the 3rd time. Honestly, I have no problem with it. I appreciate all the public awareness you have brought to La Pine, and the numbers. If we have up to 200 people out there in the forest with children, yeah. You know what? 2 minutes? Could you have 2 minutes?
The team link is the same. And then the agenda for the RFQ, the next work session, the agenda does start with public comment, then goes to CHRO RFQ funding discussion, and then next step and other items.
Okay, so is it 2 minutes or something? How long of a time is it for public comments?
It depends on it's the discretion of the chair or
Okay.
or who's running them. Who from CHRO is running the work session.
Okay. I'm not running the work session, but I think you should have 2 minutes.
Okay, all right. Well, then I will try and keep this short. Instead of
Can
reading my
we just make it clear that
statement.
we just make it clear that we're switching from the one work session to the other, just so that we know, okay, we are now starting the second work session meeting.
And that Mayor Richter, I know he was potentially coming to this, so I want to make sure at this noon meeting, want to make sure that he has that link. He has the right link.
Jeff, are you still on?
Go ahead, Fallon, so that we have enough time for everything. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I was asked to speak today from Patty and Mayor Richter, and I live in La Pine near the Darlene encampment area, and I have spent the last few weeks since Darlene 3 speaking out publicly about the risks that are encroaching on the communities nearby and how we can take these outreach efforts for the houselessness and also possibly address the safety issues and the fire issues and the crime issues that are impacting the communities, because we have homeowners coming up against campers and houseless people, and it's creating very dangerous social situations. There has been multiple interactions with the sheriff's office between us and our neighbors. There has been, there's been children involved. I've had to make CPS calls. I've come across a woman dragging her toddler through the snow in the middle of the BLM, things like that. And I'm here today to just remind everyone that I know this is mostly a housing related issue, but it really has to be part of the conversation as well. As Patty mentioned, that we have to be real about the fire risks and the crime risks and the other things that come along with this issue so that we can address that when we're creating solutions. Because there really are a lot of people who live out near China Hat, live near Darlene, and they're really becoming hostages in their own home, and they're worried about losing everything. And so many of us want to help and have a positive influence in this, but we don't know where to start. And so we're really just starting with trying to have our voices heard. And for me, I'm speaking for my family and as a business owner, but also my neighbors. Some of my neighbors are too afraid to attend meetings like this because they've been threatened and assaulted by camp members. And so that's why I was asked to be here today, is to just interject that part of the conversation and remind everyone that we do have to have that as part of the conversation. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. And I hope I kept it within 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Fallon. Thank you.
Perfect.
It's very scary stuff. Patty knows this, but my grandmother is in that memory care facility that's right across the street in Lapine,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
were very worried about her, and they called me to say, like, you may have to come get her right now. And it's a really scary, so I can only imagine. That's terrifying, and it sounds like it's not just the fire, but you're living with some fear every day. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone's openness, because I know it's a multifaceted issue. It's just, this part has to be addressed for people like your grandmother. It's a safety thing.
Her grandmother, though, is 107. I think she just had her birthday.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's super impressive.
That is
Yeah.
very impressive.
Happy
Amazing.
birthday to her.
Somebody
Yeah.
else is actually older, if you can believe that one.
One person older.
Yeah,
That's it.
one.
So she gotta keep going. That's what we told her. Like, you got to keep going, Grandma.
When I saw that, Megan, I was like, oh, good. Megan has healthy women in her family. That's good. Good for Megan. And her future. I mean,
Yes,
I
it
always
is,
think
it
about
is.
that.
So, were there any other raised hands from anybody that wanted to speak at this moment? I guess I don't see anybody else with a raised hand. Okay.
All right. So I think we wanted just to start with a reminder of the 4 projects that we I don't know if approved is the right word, that we sort of gave the blessing to go forward to their jurisdictions. And then I understand that there's some movement on some of the 3 projects that we did not approve and just give the blessing to. And I know that I would love to hear some updates about that. But maybe do we want to start with Oasis Village?
Sure.
Okay. Is there anyone here that's
So Linda Klein
go
is
ahead.
not in the room. She
Okay.
didn't receive the it's a Teams only meeting message and was without her laptop someplace else.
Oh, shoot.
So
Okay.
from her, she said that Oasis Village plans to move forward with their project. They're going to request pod funding, I believe is what they're looking at
Yep.
here.
And
And I can move on to Mountain View Community Development is going to expand safe parking and is probably only eligible for GAP funding. So we could use some feedback in that direction. That's my notes from her.
Okay.
So from a contracting perspective, we've been in communication with Linda, asked her to develop a just brief budget of what are the costs associated with the request from the pods to make sure that everything is eligible. And then she's well aware of the boundaries that the CHRO put on the funding in terms of up to a certain amount if there's an extenuating circumstance. So she's going to then get back. So we're working closely to get those dollars out.
I have a way bigger story about Oasis Village because of that sound factor and because of the fact that I thought it would be really nicer if it looked a little better there. They're adding more units, but I had an incredible conversation with Taylor Northwest, and they are willing whenever we need them to put boulders in. Oasis is currently working on, with Eleanor and Wally, they're working on a landscaping plan. So, and then Taylor Northwest will bring in the boulders, which is great. But then Wally also shared with me that they put the wrong windows in the original cabins, whatever you want to call them. They're the wrong windows. So the air conditioning units don't fit in those windows. And they were having more made and they were making the same kind of windows. And I'm like, oh my gosh, think of the heat and think of the intensity of when it's 100 degrees. So I'm hoping that he's gotten that building design up, changed in order to allow for air conditioning, heating units to be put in. Anyway,
Mhm.
that, you know, but it is great. They're adding more units. So I think that's wonderful.
Quick question, Tammy, on the funding for the Oasis Village expansion, is that from the MAC funds?
Sorry, that's the funding from the governor's office for the 1.1 million for the pods.
Okay,
And so, but also Katie, who's the one who's going to be working, she's our fiscal analyst or fiscal administrator. She also is aware of any funding that would be available through the executive order. That does have to be approved through the MAC though. So she'd be able to know if there's anything there to augment. In addition, if there are associated costs, you might recall that the CHRO also set aside a small pot of funds that could be used for a request too. It sounds like for Oasis, it's pretty clean that they're looking for pod funding. So that will come out of the 1.1.
Okay. All right. And then do we want to talk Dean Swift next? I know I see Brooke is on, and I see Amy is on. I don't know if anyone wanted to give a little update on Don's House / Dean Swift.
Formerly Don's House.
Yes.
The city is the city is moving forward with discussions in conjunction with COV to develop 6 units on the site. Currently, it is still has some of the infrastructure from the previous safe parking location. COV is working to negotiate a lease agreement for that location along with the auxiliary building that Don was using as a clubhouse. We intend at the city to match for operations funds. So we're just planning to absorb that in the current budget that will amend with council for COV. So we'll also be pursuing the pod funding. Currently, we do have a bid from the Gales brothers that meet the habitability requirements under the HUD definitions. And so we're hoping to employ some folks locally to make those units available as quickly as possible. They are 19.5, and so our total request will be 117,000.
Okay. So that would be the request for the CHRO. Just want to make sure that's, yes, just make sure that's clear.
117,000 of the pod money. We do need confirmation, Tammy, on what we're needing and if habitability and the standard definition by HUD is what we're targeting. If so, we're good to go.
Yep. And it sounds like we got confirmation that yes,
Oh,
it
great.
does. And so that again is going to be similar. So it won't be a CRO spend. It's
Great.
a pod fund spend similar. So Katie and I'll work our magic on this side and get those dollars allocated.
It's our intention to send a general letter to you, Tammy, and to Katie and CC, the CRO board, if you prefer, and just say this is what we need it for, and this is our timeline. We're hoping to have beds open as quickly as possible.
Perfect.
Awesome. Is there any operations money needed for that, or?
Not going to pursue any kind of operational funding. Okay. We'll go ahead and leave that 150 at the discretion of the board to utilize with other programs within the city and their existing contract with the city for outdoor shelter. We can absorb that cost and want to put forth a good faith match.
Great.
So that's what we're doing.
Great. The next one was the was 97. So and I know that Patty, you mentioned that the county was not interested in funding anything on that property that Central Oregon Villages had suggested. I think right now it sounds to me, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, we're kind of in a holding pattern there while we get this Dean Swift thing going before we sort of move on to the next steps there. There has been some talk of if the Central Oregon Village thing just seems like it's not something that is you know, a good possibility for that space, that maybe we look into doing a small amount of safe parking there in the future, but that's not something that was in the RFQ, so we can leave that for the future. But it is something that we're still still working on. It just hasn't come to fruition yet. And then while I have you and Brooke on, the last one was safe parking expansion. And we have a few potential new churches in Bend that that I know that Rick has been connecting with. I don't know if it's something that we want to put out there publicly yet, but I'll leave that up to you and Brooke to.
Oh, and I will totally defer to Brooke on that.
Okay. Okay. Oh, she's on
'Cause
mute.
I'm a-
I don't know. Oh, there she is.
there.
Hi.
Hey, everyone.
Hi,
Yeah, we
Brooke.
have a few other religious entities that are interested in safe parking. So those conversations have been started and are ongoing.
Mhm.
So more to come soon, probably.
And Rick Russell is kindly helping make those connections in the city of Bend, which we are very grateful for. And those are the four, right? Am I forgetting anything?
There's two more that I can update on. One is
Awesome.
was not a specific CHRO RFQ item, but it comes into play. And then the second
Yeah.
one is Juniper Ridge. So the first one is the DSL associated land swap.
Yep.
The county owns the 137 acres. The Department of State Lands said before we do the land swap, the people need to be relocated. So the county has identified 45 acres of that is southeast of Redmond. This has been discussed by the Board of County Commissioners and City of Redmond City Council at a joint meeting. Although there was not a specific project tied to it, the Board of County Commissioners has asked staff to look at that possibility with county ARPA funds. So what we did is county staff met with City of Redmond staff to talk through it because it's within the city of Redmond. There's a code that Redmond has that relates to supported or managed camp. The code requires that there be some type of case management services because we want people moving out of homelessness. The code also requires that they be the responsible party has a contact number for both during the day and during off hours. And there's also a requirement that the area be fenced in or that there be a fence around the area, a 6-foot fence. That could be waived by the community development director. So county staff met with Redmond staff to talk about some concepts. We came up with 3 various concepts, and they kind of start with the bare minimum. And then, the bare minimum is kind of what we're doing at Juniper Ridge plus case management services. And then it tiers up to more of a formal managed camp. Earlier this week, we met with Redmond service providers and shared with them the draft concepts and asked for their feedback. That we'll continue to get their feedback over the next couple of weeks. And then really the next step of that is for county staff to go to the Board of County Commissioners and say, what elements do you want to see? We probably need to put out an RFP to get to see if service providers would want to provide these types of services there. And if so, how much it would cost. But before doing that, county staff, we want to talk to the Board of County Commissioners to share with them the draft elements of the RFP and to get that direction from our commissioners. But
Okay.
The goal is that we do probably the minimum is a supported camp, and then at the higher levels it would be more of a managed camp. There's some obvious challenges, including possible lack of service provider ability or interest, but we need to try to get that going.
Mhm.
The second piece is Juniper Ridge, the county-owned piece of Juniper Ridge. There was a proposal through the CHRO RFQ process that had a large managed camp. The scoring committee put that as a tier 3. They liked the idea because it was very well thought out in terms of the types of services, but it was a very large scale operation. for a relatively new nonprofit. So that was the feedback. That group has since gone back and is looking at proposing something on a smaller scale. And it's something that I know Patty has been working on, Chuck Hemingway, Linda Muir. So next step of that process is for that group to meet with county staff probably in later this month and look at some concepts. But the idea is to have a smaller scale managed camp on county-owned property in Juniper Ridge that would help people at Juniper Ridge transition out of homelessness.
And Jessica Gamble is part of this group too. Jessica actually got TV coverage from yesterday, what she's doing. She was homeless in China Hat. She has an incredibly excellent perspective of what needs to be done. And like what I was saying, the people that are there need to be worked with at least four times a week. The continuity makes things happen. And you know, we do have children. We have children in China Hat and Juniper Ridge, and we've definitely got to get those kids somewhere healthier. So
Yes,
Is
thank you.
Jessica working with other service providers? I mean, is that part of this
She's-
concept?
she's working
Or
with
sh-
Chuck Hemingway on this. They're putting together a plan. They've picked a small piece of property, maybe like 5 acres, I think. They're going to start small and make it successful and then go on from there. But if you go out to the 50 acres, at one time when I was there in May, I think there were like 14 camps there. There's a chop shop there. A law enforcement needs to come in and get rid of that chop shop. So, but it's definitely progress. But we have Compass Security there twice a day because you know how they've started that fire there. What was a couple years ago? Remember the fire that almost took out the Four Seasons mobile home park? It was right up to the edge of that. So anyway, it seems like, and Chuck just had his knee replacement last week. So I'm hoping, yeah, by the end of the month, don't you think, Eric, we can really get together and have something, a great possibility.
But
Yeah, and I
you
really,
haven't funded it yet.
We have
No.
that money set aside to
I
do
mean, the
something.
Board of Commissioners asked before we move forward on the county ARPA funds to look at Juniper Ridge and the DSL land swap. So that's been a priority for the commissioners
Got it.
for the
Okay.
county's ARPA funds.
And Patty, you mentioned being able to spot zone
Yes, the Gales property.
The Gales property.
That almost 9 acres, right between the two churches. Because we need somewhere to say, okay, please move here, but you have to leave. And we actually have the legal authority now that we can tell them if they won't move there, that they have to leave. They have to leave Deschutes County. So law enforcement has clearly got to pick it up. We only have 5 officers on 1.5 million acres from the Forest Service, and BLM is in pretty much the same situation. They're incredibly underfunded, and 80-90% of the work, I was told in like 19, that they're dealing with the homeless, and they've got to get them off the federal lands because they are destroying our federal lands. They don't follow any of the rules.
Okay, so but you said the governor is given that's the
Well, we're
governor's
working.
office
They
has indicated
actually
support.
responded to my,
Okay.
I have had a big conversation with Matt. Farm Bureau is writing a letter of support because it would take another year at
Yeah.
least to get the Gales property rezoned. And then of course, Central Oregon Land Watch would probably come in and say, oh no, you can't do that. And we really need a safe spot. It's 1,400 feet from the UGB, a quarter of a mile. It's got the access right off
It
of
does?
Heavy. Yeah, it's got a great access and we need it. So, we've got a tremendous number of new, opportunities within the city of Bend and Redmond. But this will be like the feeder. And there probably still are people out in China, Juniper, that do want help and they do want to be safe. So hopefully this will happen.
Are you hearing for all of these projects that there is a capacity availability from service providers?
Oh, I just heard what Nikki left Central Oregon Villages. The Gales are totally in support of this, and they're the people that actually built the pods at Central Oregon Villages. They do excellent work. They're supportive. Chuck Hemingway has been supportive. It'll just depend if they go with that. I didn't get to hear you because somebody was on the phone. I had a call regarding the operation near Les Schwab. I don't know. Are they going ahead with that?
We're pausing on that and moving forward with the Dean Swift property first. And the Gales brothers are helping with that process, which is
good.
great.
Good. That's a win-win.
But if the Central Oregon Villages on 97 does not happen, one thought we had was, or if it's a later on thing, then maybe we could put some safe parking there was one of the things we were thinking of, just a few spots there, but that is not in this RFP. So
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that, yeah, it's great. Hi, Brooke. I know Brooke's dad. Anyway, it's great that safe parking is so successful. Thank goodness that program is expanding. So the more people we can help to transition, I think it's amazing. Yeah, had an amazing story about Basics. I don't know, maybe Rick shared it with you, but Basics hired somebody that was in the safe parking program. They've already received 3 raises. They're at $29 an hour. Their wife's making $24 an hour. They have an apartment, and they have so learned to be careful that they have a roommate for the other bedroom. They're in a 2-bedroom. So it's really it's really making good sense.
Kat, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. So going back to the land swap and the 45 acres in Redmond, one of the things that I think helps motivate people to move when we're talking about supported or managed camps is those amenities. So having access to electricity to hook up their RVs to, I mean, having water, potable water that is easier than trekking across the 45 acres to get. So as we're looking at those things, I know it's an expense added burden, but it's also a good thing to think about because they become better stewards of where they live. And then on top of that, though, given our recent fires in the Darlene 3, I do know with the location of that 45 acres and the recent fire outside the Redmond Airport and the evacuation of West Palo Butte Estates, we will be hearing from them about this because they're very concerned about proximity and about what we're doing. So also with a managed camp, having a fire safety plan. So having it not just supported but managed, so we have the turnarounds, the ability for fire vehicles to get in there and do the things they need to do. I just think that's critical and want to make sure that's on the table.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Yeah. Yeah, and I think again, this is where the public engagement piece comes in. Is that a managed camp is not what we're seeing in our forests. A managed camp has safety, and so I think that's maybe the role of us at at the CHRO and our various jurisdictions to communicate that to the public, but also to bring. We talked a lot about, with our best practices, bringing the public along from the very beginning has been the number one way to ensure that these things are successful. Are there anything for the pods, Tammy? Is there anything that we need to be doing or need to be helping facilitate right now in order to get that money out?
I don't think so. I think you're going to still have money that will be available after these pods are invested and so or requested in terms of the existing funding. So should there be something in the future, Gail's property or whatnot, I know that there was a commitment to getting things going in the UGB first and seeing the success there. So nothing on our side. We did have a question that came up early of who's supposed to be reaching out to secure that funding. I think we have that all buttoned up. So I think we're good. And I haven't, we will shepherd forward any requests from the funding that you all set aside from your funding.
Mhm.
So I think that we're in a good
Great.
spot.
And while sorry, Amy, I keep doing this to you. Just to, if you have a second, maybe Amy, to share, I'm sorry, the OHCS money that did come in and what that means for our shelters, just so that this group knows. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And Tammy probably is a better resource. What I can say is that the shelters will be receiving money through COIC at a rate that will enable them to operate fully in the next fiscal year. And I understand that those contracts are now out for review with COIC and the other partners, or at least that's what OHCS told me.
Yep.
And in the meantime, the city will continue to fill any gaps in the budget and make allowances to ensure that shelters can run until those contracts are in place.
Great.
So
Thank
we
you.
just are, it's slow like last time where we know that there are dollars coming. And then we just sort of continue to look at the sky, hoping that actually we've been in close communication saying we need the dollars, we need certainty. And so it is a good thing, though, in terms of being able to have sustainability. We are not going to be able, we will, with this funding, I don't see us at a space unless this legislative session goes really, really well, where we're going to be able to say for the next 5-7 years, we are just locked in. But I think we definitely have an opportunity to continue this legislative discussion around it's working. We are getting to achieving the goals, and we need to not let go of the investments and continue to build upon it. So that's just my side note commentary.
I will say that it's really nice to have COIC in place and advocating alongside the city. Last year, we had 3 months that the city had to pick up the complete costs, and it's just a real sense of security, Tammy, to have your organization, out there saying, no, it has to be in place before that, because that is just simply unsustainable for us.
Yep. Happy to.
Great. Are there any other things that we need to work out with all of this? Anything that, or challenges you're facing in your own communities that that CHRO could help with?
I have a staff question.
Oh, yeah.
So let's say we do get a request to tap the 150. Those dollars are held by Deschutes County. How would you like us to, how would you like us to bring that? Would you like us to bring that back? Do you want to do we're getting closer to your next meeting, so it shouldn't be that long of a period of time where someone wouldn't have a decision, but just wanting some guidance in how, if someone's asking us, we obviously will work with Eric, just wanting to make sure that we don't stumble or waste any time getting those dollars out the door too. And so Eric, I don't know if that's on, and we could actually at some point, if you wanted, I don't know if we are able to be speedier in getting the dollars out, or what your timeline might look like. We're happy to hold those funds without an administrative fee and match them together too. I just throw that as that's something that feels gray for me. And maybe we don't need to solve it today, but there it is.
Yeah, one thing I'll look at is when the CHRO budget is put together. Well, like the first question is like a technical. Would we need to do a budget adjustment? Would the board need to? I'm thinking probably not, because the way that I put together the budget for like contract services, I just put like a placeholder in. I have to double check on how much. So one is technically is the budget set up for that expenditure. And then, it's probably a approval from the CHRO board and either a acknowledgement by the Board of County Commissioners. Again, if we need to do a budget adjustment, it would take a formal action of the board, but it might be contained in the budget.
So we might want to see if we could, just as an idea, maybe get that approval ahead of time so that when a request does come, that 150, I don't want to drive the CHRO bus, but I would wonder if you maybe want the Board of Commissioners to free up those dollars before you have a need versus waiting until there's a request, which could cause a bit of a lag.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to consider is if I'm just gonna walk through the scenario. If I go to the Board of Commissioners and say, there's been, the CHRO board has wanted to set aside 150,000. We want to get board approval to expend it. The board may say, well, it depends on the project, or may want to look back at the list to say, so I'm just not sure how to navigate that. I mean, for example,
Eric.
Yeah.
It's Counselor Zwicker. So what I think I'm hearing you say, and I might be in agreement, but correct me if I'm wrong, please, is that when we're looking at that pool of money, we're also going to look project specific. Is that something that fills a gap, fits a need, or is it something that, while yes, we could do this and spend the money, we already have this going over here and we don't need another like kind project. We need something that's, more intrinsic to the gap of people moving from unhoused to temporary or permanent supportive housing, or we need, that sort of thing. So I think that's important that we're looking at that and know how that funding's going, I guess.
Yeah, it gets a little bit more complex. For example, I'll use the Highway 97 proposal. Should somebody come forward and say, we want to use some or all of the $150,000 from the CHRO budget for a managed camp at that property near Les Schwab, two of our commissioners have said they don't support that. So it would, that type of project would be complicated. But I think if it's other projects on that list, it might just be a simple discussion with the board.
I don't want to put too many wrinkles in it, but the CHRO didn't go to the Board of Commissioners to seek approval for supporting the RFQ projects. And it may be worthy of determining what the relationship is between CHRO authority of spending designated funds and the BOCC, just from a streamlining process. But
Correct.
it really is at the will of this body.
Yeah.
Okay, correct.
But as a first step, let me look at the technical question in terms of, I need to double check and see how much money is in the line item, because if there isn't the 150 in materials and services, then technically the board has to do a budget adjustment.
That all sounds great. I'm glad we brought it forward so that if you clear that space, then it won't stall us out of supporting any of the projects that the group's wanting to go forward with. Awesome.
Sounds like we may free up a few minutes of our day, unless there's something else that we need to, as far as the RFQ. Well, thank you. It's really exciting to see these projects moving along and see the other projects that that the county is looking into. This is really great. Yeah, just really great positive news. All right, well, I guess we'll just have our regular meeting in August, and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have fun. Stay warm.